If you had walked into that wedding, you would have noticed the same things everyone else did. The flowers, the music, the expensive decorations, the laughter echoing across the ballroom, couples dancing beneath crystal chandeliers, friends taking selfies, families celebrating what looked like the happiest day of two people's lives. But there was one secret standing in the middle of that room that not a single guest could see. A secret wearing a beautiful navy blue dress, elegant heels, carefully styled hair, and a warm smile that fooled everyone. Every single person believed the woman standing beside Ethan was his gorgeous girlfriend. They complimented her beauty. They admired how perfectly they looked together. Some even whispered that Ethan had somehow found the most graceful woman in the city. What nobody knew was that the girlfriend wasn't a girlfriend at all. Underneath the flawless makeup, beneath every confident smile and every graceful movement, stood the man Ethan had loved for almost 6 years. His name was Ryan, and before this wedding ended, the truth would change every life in that ballroom forever. Ryan had never imagined that wearing women's clothes would become the reason he found the love of his life. When he was younger, it had started as curiosity. One afternoon, while helping his older sister organize her closet, he jokingly tried on one of her oversized sweaters. Instead of laughing, he looked into the mirror and felt something he had never felt before. Peace. Not because he wanted to become someone else, but because he finally stopped pretending to fit into everyone else's expectations. It wasn't about changing who he was. It was about expressing a side of himself that had always existed but had never been allowed to breathe. Growing up in a small town where every rumor spread faster than the morning newspaper made that impossible, Ryan quickly learned that people accepted only what they understood. Anything different became entertainment, gossip, or worse, rejection. So he hid that part of himself. During the day, he dressed like every other guy in town. At night, when everyone was asleep, he quietly opened a small storage box hidden beneath his bed. Inside were a few carefully folded dresses, a pair of inexpensive heels, and makeup he had secretly bought with money saved from working weekends. Those quiet nights became the only moments when he truly felt free. Years passed before anyone discovered his secret. Surprisingly, the first person wasn't a stranger. It was his younger cousin Emma. Ryan forgot to lock his bedroom door one evening. Emma walked in without knocking and froze. Ryan expected laughter, anger, maybe even disgust. Instead, Emma smiled. "You look happier than I've ever seen you." Those words stayed with him for years. Emma never forced Ryan to explain himself. She simply accepted him exactly as he was. Sometimes acceptance isn't loud. Sometimes it arrives quietly, sits beside you, and tells you that you don't have to be afraid anymore. College finally gave Ryan something his hometown never could: anonymity. Thousands of students meant nobody cared enough to question how someone dressed. He slowly built confidence. At first, he only cross-dressed inside his apartment. Then, during costume parties. Eventually, he attended small LGBTQ-friendly gatherings where nobody judged anyone for expressing themselves. For the first time, Ryan met people whose stories sounded remarkably like his own. Different backgrounds, different dreams, the same fear of rejection. Then Ethan walked into his life. Ironically, Ethan almost never met Ryan at all. A mutual friend invited Ethan to an art exhibition downtown. Ryan almost skipped it because he couldn't decide whether to attend as himself in jeans or dressed the way he genuinely enjoyed expressing himself. After standing in front of the mirror for almost an hour, he finally chose the navy dress hanging inside his closet. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't designed to attract attention. It simply made him feel confident. He arrived 20 minutes late. Ethan noticed him immediately. Not because Ryan was the most beautiful person in the room, although many people quietly thought he was. Ethan noticed because Ryan stood alone, studying every painting as though he was trying to hear conversations hidden inside the colors. Instead of introducing himself with a pickup line, Ethan walked over and asked one simple question. "Which painting made you stop smiling?" Ryan blinked. "What?" "You smiled at every painting except one." Ryan turned toward the large abstract canvas again. "This one reminds me how exhausting pretending can be." Ethan looked at the painting for nearly a minute. I don't think it's pretending. What do you think it is? I think it's someone getting tired of surviving. Ryan laughed softly. That's oddly specific. My mom used to paint. She always said people accidentally confess to strangers because strangers don't already have expectations. That conversation lasted 3 hours. Neither of them remembered discussing names until nearly the end. Over the following months, they became inseparable. Ryan never lied about who he was. On their 4th date, he invited Ethan to his apartment. I should probably explain something before this goes any further. Ethan nodded calmly. Ryan opened his closet. Inside hung dresses arranged carefully beside men's shirts. There were heels beneath them, jewelry, makeup, everything. Ryan waited for Ethan to leave. Instead, Ethan walked closer. He looked around for several seconds before asking the question Ryan least expected. Which outfit makes you feel most like yourself? Ryan stared at him. You're not confused? I understand enough. You don't think it's weird? Ethan smiled. I think pretending to be someone you're not would be weird. Ryan felt tears gathering before he realized he was crying. For years he had prepared speeches explaining himself. He never needed one. Instead, Ethan hugged him. Not out of pity, not because he wanted to fix him. Simply because love sometimes recognizes honesty long before it understands every detail. From that night onward, Ryan stopped hiding whenever they were alone. Sometimes they went shopping together. Sometimes Ethan helped choose earrings. Other times they laughed because Ryan walked better in heels than Ethan ever could. People often assume love survives because two people are similar. The truth is that love survives because two people decide that understanding matters more than expectation. Everything felt perfect until Ethan received the wedding invitation from his older brother Daniel. Ryan immediately understood the problem. Daniel's family was deeply traditional. They had never met Ryan. They only knew Ethan was bringing a girlfriend. Ethan had never corrected them. Not because he was ashamed. Because every phone conversation somehow ended before he found the courage to explain. I'll tell them before the wedding, Ethan promised. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The conversation never happened. Finally, 3 days before the ceremony, Daniel called. So, we're excited to finally meet your girlfriend. Ethan froze. Ryan watched his face from across the room. Yeah, Ethan answered quietly. After the call ended, silence filled the apartment. Ryan looked out the window. You don't have to lie anymore. I know. You can still tell them. I know. But you're scared. Ethan nodded. I'm not scared they'll reject me. What are you scared of? I'm scared they'll reject you before they even know you. Ryan didn't answer. Because deep inside, he was afraid of exactly the same thing. The morning of the wedding arrived with bright sunlight pouring through the apartment windows, but neither Ryan nor Ethan noticed. The room felt unusually quiet. Garment bags hung from the bedroom door. Shoes were lined up neatly by the entrance. 2 cups of coffee sat untouched on the kitchen table, slowly turning cold. Ryan stood in front of the mirror wearing a silk robe, staring at his own reflection. He had done his makeup hundreds of times before, but today his hands trembled so much that he had already wiped away his eyeliner twice. It wasn't because he doubted who he was. It was because today wasn't just another day. Today, he would be surrounded by over 200 strangers who believed they already knew exactly who he was. Ethan walked into the room carrying a small jewelry box. You don't have to do this. Ryan looked at him through the mirror. I know. We can stay home. I know. We could call Daniel and tell him everything. Ryan smiled softly. You've suggested that 6 times this morning. I'm hoping one of those times you'll agree. Ryan turned around. If we hide today, we'll hide forever. Ethan sighed. I hate that you're the brave one. Ryan laughed. I'm terrified. I know. I've just spent too many years letting fear make decisions for me. Ethan opened the jewelry box. Inside rested a delicate silver necklace. I bought this 3 months ago. Ryan raised an eyebrow. You've been hiding gifts now? I wanted you to wear it today. Ryan gently picked it up. It's beautiful. It reminded me of you. Why? It doesn't try to be the brightest thing in the room. Ryan looked at him curiously. It just quietly catches the light. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Ryan leaned forward and kissed Ethan. No matter what happens today. Ethan finished the sentence. We leave together. Ryan nodded. Always. An hour later, they arrived at the hotel. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Guests stepped onto a long white carpet leading toward enormous glass doors decorated with flowers. Laughter echoed everywhere. Music floated through the warm afternoon air. As soon as Ethan and Ryan stepped out of the car, heads turned. Not because anyone recognized Ryan, because people instantly noticed how elegant the couple looked. Ryan wore the navy blue dress Ethan had first seen at the art gallery years earlier. It had been altered slightly, fitting him perfectly. His makeup was soft and natural. His hair framed his face beautifully. Even standing among professionally dressed guests, he blended in effortlessly. A valet smiled. You two look amazing together. Thank you, Ethan replied. Ryan smiled politely. Compliments like that used to make him uncomfortable. Today they simply reminded him how powerful assumptions could be. Inside the ballroom, guests greeted Ethan warmly. Cousin, it's been forever. And this must be your girlfriend. Ryan heard the same sentence over and over. So nice to finally meet you. You're even prettier than Ethan described. We've heard so much about you. Ryan shook hands, accepted hugs, answered questions, laughed naturally. Every conversation felt strangely surreal. Nobody questioned him. Nobody stared. Nobody suspected anything. Within minutes, he realized something unexpected. Most people weren't carefully analyzing him. They were simply seeing what they expected to see. Expectation filled in every blank. His voice, people assumed it was naturally deeper. His height, they assumed he wore high heels. His shoulders, they assumed he exercised. Every tiny detail that Ryan had worried about for years disappeared beneath the incredible power of assumption. Across the room, Ethan's mother approached with tears already forming in her eyes. So this is the young woman who finally stole my son's heart. Ryan's heartbeat accelerated. This mattered. More than anyone else. Ethan's mother hugged him warmly. I've wanted to meet you for years. Ryan hugged her back. So have I. She stepped back. My goodness. Ryan froze. She studied him closely. He thought everything was over. Then she smiled even wider. You have the kindest eyes. Ryan felt his shoulders relax. Thank you. You'll have to forgive this family. Ryan looked confused. Why? They ask too many questions. She laughed. And they eat too much. Ryan laughed too. I think I can survive both. I hope so. She squeezed his hand. Anyone Ethan chooses is already family to me. Ryan nearly cried. If only she knew. The ceremony began shortly afterward. Guests filled rows of elegant white chairs facing a flower-covered altar. Ryan sat beside Ethan. As music played, he watched Daniel waiting nervously for his bride. Watching someone prepare to promise forever always made Ryan emotional. Marriage wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about appearances. It was about choosing someone every day, even on difficult days. Especially on difficult days. The ceremony ended beautifully. Applause erupted. People smiled. Some cried. Everyone moved toward the reception hall. As dinner began, Ryan slowly relaxed. Maybe today wouldn't become a disaster after all. Maybe they could simply celebrate. Maybe. Then Daniel stood and tapped his glass. I'd like to thank everyone for being here. The room became quiet. This day wouldn't have been complete without family. He smiled toward Ethan. My little brother finally brought the mysterious girlfriend we've all been hearing about. Guests laughed. Ryan smiled politely. Daniel continued. I think everyone would love to know how you two met. Ryan looked at Ethan. Ethan looked back. Neither of them had expected this. Hundreds of eyes turned toward their table. Someone shouted jokingly, kiss first. More laughter. Daniel grinned. Come on, Ethan. Tell us the story. Ethan slowly stood. Ryan could immediately tell something had changed. He knew Ethan well enough to recognize the expression. It was the face Ethan made whenever he reached a decision that frightened him. He wasn't nervous anymore. He was calm. dangerously calm. Ethan took the microphone. When Daniel asked me to tell the story, he smiled. I realized something. The ballroom became completely silent. I've spent years telling only half of it. Ryan's heart pounded. Ethan looked directly at him, then back toward everyone else. The person sitting beside me is the bravest human being I've ever known. People smiled politely, thinking it was simply another romantic speech. He taught me what honesty actually looks like. Ryan slowly shook his head, almost pleading with his eyes. Not here. Not today. But Ethan gently smiled. The same reassuring smile Ryan had fallen in love with years ago. You've all welcomed him today. The word landed like thunder. Him. A few guests frowned. Others looked confused. Some glanced at Ryan, assuming they had misheard. Ethan continued before anyone could interrupt. The person you know as my girlfriend. He reached for Ryan's hand. Is actually my boyfriend. Silence. Not ordinary silence. The kind that seems to erase every sound from the world. No forks. No whispers. No music. Nothing. Over 200 people stared without blinking. Ryan felt every heartbeat echo inside his chest. Years of hiding. Years of fear. Years of imagining this exact moment. And somehow, reality felt even quieter than imagination. One elderly guest slowly removed his glasses. Another woman covered her mouth. Someone accidentally dropped a spoon. It clattered loudly against the floor. Nobody picked it up. Ryan wanted to disappear. He wanted to stand. He wanted to run. He wanted to stay. Every emotion collided at once. Then Ethan squeezed his hand. Not tightly. Just enough to remind Ryan of one promise. No matter what happens today, we leave together. Ryan looked at Ethan. For the first time since entering the ballroom, he wasn't afraid of what people saw. He was only waiting to discover who would still be looking at them when the silence finally ended. Ryan could barely hear his own breathing. The ballroom remained frozen as though time itself had stopped. Faces that had been smiling only seconds earlier now carried expressions of confusion, disbelief, curiosity, and shock. Every pair of eyes seemed fixed on him, and for the first time that day, Ryan felt completely exposed. He slowly lowered his gaze. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," he whispered. Ethan didn't let go of his hand. "No," Ethan replied quietly. "This is what we survived to reach." A murmur began spreading across the room. What did he just say? Did I hear that correctly? I thought he said boyfriend. No, he couldn't have. Some guests leaned toward one another, whispering behind their hands. Others simply stared, trying to reconcile what they had believed only moments ago with what they had just heard. Daniel stood beside the bride, still holding his champagne glass. His smile had disappeared. "Ethan." His voice cracked. "What are you talking about?" Ethan walked toward his brother, microphone still in hand. "I'm talking about the person I love." Daniel looked from Ethan to Ryan and back again. "You mean?" "Yes. The woman. There never was a girlfriend." A heavy silence settled once more. Ryan wished the floor would open beneath him. He had imagined judgment. He had imagined insults. But somehow silence hurt more. Silence left room for every fear he had ever carried. He stood up slowly. "You don't have to defend me anymore." Ethan turned immediately. "I'm not defending you." "Then what are you doing?" "I'm telling the truth." Ryan smiled sadly. "The truth has consequences." Ethan nodded. "So does hiding." Ryan looked around the ballroom. Hundreds of strangers. Only one person mattered. Him. He took a deep breath. "If anyone has questions," his voice shook, "I'd rather answer them than let people invent their own stories." A middle-aged man near the front finally spoke. "So, are you saying you're pretending to be a woman?" Ryan shook his head gently. "No." "Then explain." Ryan looked directly at him. "I'm a man." The room remained quiet. "I enjoy expressing myself through feminine clothing." He paused. "I don't wake up every morning trying to fool people." Another pause. "I wake up trying to be honest with myself." Someone near the back crossed their arms. "But why?" Ryan smiled softly. "I've been asked that question my entire life." He looked around the room. I don't actually know why some people love football. A few confused laughs escaped. I don't know why some people enjoy painting. Another small laugh. I don't know why some people love mountain climbing. He shrugged. We don't usually ask people to justify what brings them peace. His voice became steadier. This brings me peace. An elderly woman slowly nodded. Ryan continued. It isn't about costumes. It isn't about deception. It isn't about attention. If I wanted attention, today would have been the worst possible day to choose. Several guests laughed quietly. Even Daniel couldn't help smiling for a second. Ryan continued. When I was younger, I thought something was wrong with me. I spent years trying to change. I prayed. I made promises to myself. I threw away clothes. I avoided mirrors. I dated people hoping I'd become someone else. Nothing changed. He looked down briefly. The only thing that changed was how lonely I became. Across the ballroom, Ethan's mother quietly wiped tears from her eyes. Ryan noticed. I convinced myself that if enough people accepted a version of me that wasn't real, maybe I'd eventually disappear. His voice cracked. But pretending doesn't erase pain. It only hides it. A young woman sitting beside her fiancé slowly reached for his hand. The room felt different now. People weren't staring with shock anymore. They were listening. Really listening. Ryan continued. Then one day, I met someone who didn't ask me to change. He looked toward Ethan. He asked me one question. Ryan smiled. Which outfit makes you feel most like yourself? Several guests looked toward Ethan. I'd spent years preparing to defend myself. Ryan laughed softly. I'd rehearsed speeches. I'd memorized explanations. I expected arguments. Instead, he simply loved me. Ryan's eyes filled with tears. That was the first day I realized acceptance doesn't always arrive with understanding. It sometimes arrives with kindness. Nobody interrupted. Nobody whispered. Daniel slowly walked forward. Ryan tensed instinctively. Daniel stopped only a few feet away. I have one question. Ryan nodded. Anything. Daniel looked genuinely confused. When you came here today, were you planning to tell us? Ryan answered honestly. I wanted to. What stopped you? Ryan didn't hesitate. Fear. Daniel looked at Ethan. And you? The same. Daniel sighed deeply. You two thought we'd hate you. Neither of them answered. Because the silence itself was answer enough. Daniel looked around the ballroom, then back at them. I wish you had trusted us more. Ryan felt tears forming again. I wanted to. I just didn't know if I could survive finding out I was wrong. Daniel closed the distance between them. For one long second, Ryan expected rejection. Instead, Daniel wrapped both arms around him. The ballroom gasped. Daniel whispered quietly enough that only Ryan could hear. My little brother has smiled more in the last 6 years than he did in the 25 before. Ryan closed his eyes. If you're the reason, Daniel's own voice cracked. Then you're already family. Ryan couldn't stop crying. Neither could Ethan. Applause didn't begin immediately. It started with one pair of hands. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, the entire ballroom echoed with applause. Not everyone stood. Not everyone agreed. A handful of guests quietly gathered their belongings and left without saying a word. Ryan watched them go. He felt no anger, only relief. For years he had believed everyone would reject him. Now he realized something important. Not everyone has to stay. The people who choose kindness are enough. Ethan's mother walked toward Ryan carrying a folded napkin. She gently handed it to him. I told you earlier. Ryan looked at her. That you have kind eyes. She smiled through tears. I was right. Ryan laughed while wiping his face. You aren't angry? She looked genuinely surprised. At what? I didn't tell you the truth. She shook her head. I'm a mother. My job isn't to love the version of someone that's easiest. My job is to love the person standing in front of me. Ryan completely broke down. For years he had imagined this conversation ending differently. Not with rejection. Not with anger. But with a woman gently fixing the collar of his dress the same way a mother would straighten her son's tie before a family photograph. She stepped back and smiled. There. Ryan laughed. What? You were nervous. I could tell. She brushed an invisible wrinkle from his shoulder. Now you look perfect. For the first time that entire day, Ryan believed her. The applause slowly faded, but something in the room had changed forever. Conversations that had once been built on assumptions were now replaced with genuine curiosity. Some guests still looked uncertain. Others smiled warmly. A few quietly slipped out the side doors, unable or unwilling to process what had happened. Ryan noticed them leave. Years earlier, he would have counted every person who walked away. Today, he counted the ones who stayed. That number was much larger. The band, unsure whether to continue, looked toward Daniel. Daniel wiped his eyes, laughed awkwardly, and picked up the microphone. Well, the room chuckled. I definitely wasn't expecting my wedding speech to be interrupted like this. More laughter spread through the ballroom. But if today has taught me anything, he looked toward Ryan and Ethan. It's that weddings are supposed to celebrate love. He turned toward the guests. So, unless someone accidentally married the wrong person. The room erupted into laughter. I think we still have a reception to enjoy. The tension that had gripped the ballroom for nearly 15 minutes finally broke. People began talking again. Music slowly returned. Servers continued bringing food. Life moved forward. Ryan exhaled for what felt like the first time all afternoon. You okay? Ethan asked. Ryan smiled. I think so. You don't have to smile if you're not. I know. Ryan looked around. I'm smiling because I don't have to pretend anymore. A young couple approached their table. They looked to be in their early 20s. The woman smiled nervously. Hi. Ryan smiled back. Hi. I hope this isn't inappropriate. It's okay. She hesitated. I just wanted to thank you. Ryan looked confused. For what? She glanced at her boyfriend before speaking. My younger brother loves dressing in feminine clothes. Ryan blinked. Our parents keep telling him it's just a phase. She smiled sadly. But watching you today. She swallowed hard. I think he would have felt less alone. Ryan felt his throat tighten. You think so? I know so. She reached into her purse. I actually have a picture. She showed Ryan a photo. A teenage boy stood in front of a mirror wearing a floral dress, smiling wider than anyone else in the picture. Ryan couldn't stop smiling. He's beautiful. She laughed. I'll tell him you said that. Before leaving, she hugged Ryan tightly. Thank you. Ryan whispered. No. He smiled through tears. Thank you. As the evening continued, more guests approached. Some apologized for assumptions they hadn't even realized they had made. Others admitted they didn't fully understand but wanted to learn. A few simply offered hugs. Ryan answered every question honestly, not because he owed anyone an explanation, but because every respectful conversation replaced one more misunderstanding. Hours later, the dance floor filled with guests. Daniel found Ethan near the dessert table. So, Ethan laughed nervously. So, you owe me an explanation. I know. Actually, Daniel smiled. You owe me about 6 years of explanations. The brothers stepped onto the hotel balcony, overlooking the city lights. For a few moments, neither spoke. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. Were you really that scared? Ethan nodded. Every day. You thought I'd stop being your brother? I didn't know. Daniel leaned against the railing. You know it hurts? What? You didn't trust me enough to let me prove you wrong. Ethan looked down. You're right. I am. Daniel sighed. But I also understand why. He placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. I've never had to wonder whether my family would still love me after telling them who I love. Ethan looked at him. I guess that's a privilege I never noticed. Daniel nodded. I won't pretend I understand everything. You don't have to. But I do understand one thing. What's that? I've watched you smile all night. He smiled. I haven't seen that smile since we were kids. Ethan laughed quietly. Ryan does that. I can tell. Daniel looked through the ballroom windows. Ryan was talking with Ethan's mother, both of them laughing together. I don't know much about crossdressing. Ethan waited. But I know happiness when I see it. Back inside, Ryan wandered into a quiet hallway for a moment alone. The emotional weight of the day was finally catching up with him. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. "You hiding?" Ryan opened his eyes. An older gentleman stood nearby. Gray hair, simple black suit, gentle smile. Ryan recognized him as the bride's grandfather. "A little." The old man chuckled. "I've been hiding from loud weddings for 30 years. Ryan laughed. The man slowly walked over. "I wanted to tell you something." Ryan nodded. "When I was 22, the man looked down the hallway. "I wanted to become a pianist." Ryan blinked. "My father said real men worked with their hands. So, I became a mechanic." Ryan listened quietly. "I was a very good mechanic." The old man smiled. "But every time I heard someone play the piano..." He paused. "I wondered who I might have become." Ryan felt goosebumps. The old man looked directly at him. "I'm 84 now. I've learned something." "What?" "The saddest people I've ever met weren't the ones who failed. They were the ones who spent their lives performing for audiences that were never going to clap anyway." Ryan stood speechless. The old man smiled warmly. "You've already won." Ryan frowned. "Won what?" "The freedom to stop performing." He gently squeezed Ryan's shoulder. "Don't waste it." Then he quietly walked back toward the reception. Ryan remained standing in the hallway long after he disappeared. Those words settled deep inside him. He realized that for most of his life, he hadn't been living. He'd been auditioning. Auditioning to be accepted. Auditioning to seem normal. Auditioning to deserve love. And for the first time, the audition was over. When Ryan returned to the ballroom, Ethan spotted him immediately. "There you are." Ryan walked over. "I think," he smiled, "I finally understand something." "What?" Ryan intertwined his fingers with Ethan's. "I spent years trying to become someone people would accept." He looked around the room. "I should have been trying to become someone I could recognize in the mirror." Ethan smiled. "I've recognized you since the first day we met." Ryan laughed. "You recognized me before I did." The band announced one final slow dance before the evening ended. Daniel grabbed the microphone one last time. "I'd like every couple here." He looked around the room. "To join us on the dance floor." One by one, husbands found wives. Wives found wives. Husbands found husbands. Partners found each other. Young couples. Elderly couples. Newlyweds. Parents. Grandparents. Without saying a word, Daniel looked directly at Ethan and Ryan. He smiled. "That means everyone." Ryan looked at Ethan. Ethan offered his hand. "May I have this dance?" Ryan placed his hand in Ethan's. "I thought you'd never ask." Together they walked onto the dance floor. Not as a secret. Not as a misunderstanding. Not as boyfriend and girlfriend. Just as two people who had finally stopped hiding. And for the first time in Ryan's life, every step felt honest.